Good morning, friends. Let's get crafty. I am going to make a pair of shorts using a modification of this vintage pattern, and I'm going to cut up this vintage skirt and make the shorts out of them because upcycling is the future. But bam, here they are. Super cute, a little bit shorter than I planned though. All right, the first thing I'm doing is I am basically tearing apart the skirt so I can iron out the pieces flat. Because I need to miter all of these stripes in the print, I need them to lay perfectly flat against each other. I do the same with the lining. And here I am trying my best to line them up. And I was only about 1 cup of coffee in here, so I did pretty good. The red stripe indicates where the new hem cut line will be. But as you can see, I've made indication marks based off of the notches as to where the stripe starts on both sides. That way the sides of the print will match. And then they go in on the vertical diagonal in. I've learned that's the most flattering way to direct a stripe. So one thing that happened here is that I didn't have enough to continue the pattern piece. So what I'm going to do here is match this up with a little scrap fabric and make it so I can just add on to the fabric. I do have to stitch it together, but it's not too difficult. It's not the best to have this happen to you, but when you're upcycling things, you don't get a full yardage. You kind of have to make do with what you got. So first I'm making a nice flat, clean cut there and lining up the stripe as best as possible. Then I'm going to pin it in a bit so that I know that I have some seam allowance, because that's always important to remember seam allowances. Otherwise, your stripes don't match up. Once you have everything pinned together nicely, you'll cut this piece out according to the pattern, which I do here in just a moment. I'll go ahead and sort of adjust it a little bit, as you want to make sure the stripes are lining up and they're going all the same direction. They're straight, as one could say. And then just repin that little section of your pattern and cut it out as if nothing ever happened at all. It's like it never happened. It was always perfect. All right, that's nice and cut out, so just go over to the machine and stitch it. And then show off how your stripes don't match. This must have been the underside piece that I didn't realize didn't match up when I was filming this. But if you can look closely, the other side looks great. So I don't know why I chose that one, but you get what I mean. Thankfully, that's a little bit hidden. Now I'm going to take the lining and cut out the exact same pieces, because this will be the lining of your shorts. I would like to note that these shorts are now cut on the bias, and this pattern is not supposed to be cut on the bias. So the lining being cut on the bias, as indicated by the pattern, will help these shorts fit much better. And now we're going to fix another mistake that I noticed when I was trying to line everything up, which is I must have screwed up the measurement somewhere, because the center crotch part of the front is much longer than the back. So I'm just going to hack this, and I'm going to cut that front crotch line up a bit. Normally, adjusting the rise of your pants could be risky business, but this pattern is slightly too small for me, and so I'm thinking this might actually make this pant more comfortable. And I can tell you now, because I already made it, it totally does. So all I'm doing here is matching up those seam lines and doing a soft little curve up, making sure to not curve into the rise too much, just trimming it off. Just trimming off that crotch, which is a total technical term in sewing, I promise. Don't Google it, just trust me. Let's cut the waistband. Now this waistband should be cut in one piece altogether, but because we don't have that much fabric in the way that I want to use it, I'm going to cut it into two pieces using the back center line as the fold. However, it's not going to be on the fold. I'm going to give myself a 1/2 inch of seam allowance on the back end. Right here, I'm just kind of figuring out where I want my button placement to be. I don't want it to be in a place where there's a lot of heavy embroidery. That finger right there is to indicate the back seam line. And here we go. Ba-bam, that's what it looks like. All right, so one piece is longer than the other, and that's because it folds over in the front. Just be wary of noting that on your pattern and not cutting them the same, unless your pattern says to do that. And I've also decided to add a zipper fly in this. The original pattern does not have a zip fly, but I like the look of it better. So I'm cutting out some facings for that, which is almost like a little kind of a banana shape-ish. It curves on one side and follows the line of the front rise down the other. And I cut 2 in the outer fabric and 2 in lining. And I'll show you what to do with these. I mean, it's kind of a banana, right? I mean, it's a weird banana with a flat side. I haven't seen that kind of banana. Here's me just cutting it out and lining. Nothing too spectacular. And always use your interfacings. This is a fusible interfacing, which for waistbands, especially because it's in wool, which means that it's going to move around a lot, you want to really stabilize it. And here we have what it will look like when it's all fused and stitched at that back. I've also went ahead and ironed a crease down the center. And I'm attempting here to show you what the waistband will look like when it's all sewn and looking super pretty and cute. So cute. Let's start sewing. All right, let's start with all your darts. Front darts, back darts, both on the regular fabric and your lining. Now I'm going to show you what to do with the banana. This is the super basic way to put a fly in. And honestly, you don't have to make these separate that you sew on. You can cut your original pattern out with this shape already in it. But this is how I learned to do a fly. There's other ways that are more advanced, which are awesome as well, but this one was just kind of a quick one for this particular project. So all I'm doing is taking the two sides that are cut like the rise, meaning the side of the banana that's cut more straight, and I'm just sewing that to the rise of my pants. Now I'm just going to put a little notch in here, and that way when I open it up and press out that seam, I don't have to choose which side that seam allowance goes on. I'll show you what I mean here in like right now. I like to press open my seams, so that's going to be nice. And then look, it's like it was always part of the pattern since the beginning. And I just repeat that on the lining as well. That's what that looks like. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch that whole front part together. And I'm going to use a really small seam, probably a 1/4 inch. It's better for this to have less bulk in your seam allowance because you're going to flip it out and iron it flat. Now you may be asking yourself, well, Jamie, why did you bother cutting out those weird banana shapes and attaching them to these pieces when you could have just cut them out as part of the original pattern? And my answer is because I didn't know I wanted to put a fly in yet at the time. That is the simple answer. Normally, I would have just cut them out as part of the pattern. That's the thing about sewing, kids. Sometimes you have to make different choices as you're moving along with the project. Now I'm putting notches in that curve. It's going to help me be able to turn out this and iron it nice and flat with no pulls in the seams. Oh yeah, that's going to look really nice when it's all pressed. And it does. Pardon all the lint on these. I take a lint remover to it later, clearly. But for now, what's the point? I mean, it's just going to get messier as you're sewing with it. All right. There we go. Now I'm just indicating here that I'm going to stitch the lining and the shorts hems together now. Because I accidentally made these a little shorter than I wanted, I won't have much of a hem allowance. So I just decided that 1/4 of an inch with the fabric sewn together and then flipped out is probably going to be perfect. I'll show you what I mean here in just a moment. Essentially what I'm doing is putting in my hem before I even assemble the shorts. Yep, like that. So now I'm going to do a quick little stay stitch across the top and down the sides. This can be a wider stitch if you want. And as you can see there, my lining is a little bit bigger than the shorts. And I didn't mean that on purpose, but I'm quite glad it happened because it gives me a little bit more flexibility in the roominess of the shorts. Because again, the shorts are on the bias and the lining is not. So it gives me just a little bit more wiggle room in terms of fit. And this is me just putting a nice little stay stitch across the top. And once you're done with this, you basically repeat this on the other side until you have 2 of the same pieces that mirror one another. And then we'll get into the fun part of adding in the zipper front fly. If you are following along with me, this is what you should have right now. The raw edges are the top, the side, and that center crotch area. Okay, now I have 2 matching sides and I'm going to show you how to add this zip fly. So we want to start by putting the pieces against each other. And let's see, how do I do this? About a 1/2 inch up from where that, nope, that's not what I do. Here's what I do. I'm so sorry, y'all. I start with a based stitch down the center front, pretending as if those 2 little banana pieces weren't there. You would just base stitch down the front, but you don't go all the way. You go right to about where my thumb is, if my hand would move, which is like at the bottom where that first curve is. Now, a based stitch means a wide stitch, which means we pull it out later. Not always. You don't always pull out all base stitches, but for this particular sewing detail, we do pull out this base stitch. So don't stitch it with a really tight stitch. Okay, so let me trim that, but I'm going to leave my tails. Okie dokie. Now we go back to that thing that I thought we were doing at first. Yay. All right. Now we're going to put a regular stitch from a little bit above and in from where that base stitch, see that's the end of my base stitch, and we're going to do it like over to the side and a little bit up. And this is a regular stitch, so go back to the regular tightness you do. And you just sew down that curve. Sometimes in the past I've started with this step, so I'm just going to allow myself to forgive myself for making that mistake earlier in this voiceover. You can really start with either one, but the base stitch does give you a nice starting point where to put your curve stitch there, and that one stays permanently, so you want to make sure it's perfect. All right, there we go. That's the start. That's what that looks like. And that's what that looks like. Now we're going to put in our zipper. So we want to open up one side, boink, just like that. And then we put our zipper face down, and kind of move it in. I would say you're not stitching it totally next to your base stitch line. You're stitching it in maybe like a full zipper width, right? So the edge of the other side actually touches the base. I'm trying to move it in here so you can see a little bit more. And stitch that baby down. And you can go all the way past that curve. Just make sure to double back so it doesn't fray out. Although once all is said and done, it's pretty locked in. Okay, and then your next step is you're going to turn the zipper like this and fold that one piece back. Ta-da, like that. And you're going to top stitch that down. Okay, now you have side one done. Here comes Winston in the background. He's just going to plant himself suspiciously close to my sewing machine pedal, which always nerve-wracks me because I don't want him to accidentally press it. He's done that before. Not when I've been near it, thank God. Okay, that's what that looks like. Now, here's the fun part. All you do, you don't try to force anything to lay any certain way. The zipper and the other side, the other banana, they want to lay how they want to lay already. So all you do is just stitch it down in place. It's like the laws of physics have done the work for you. It's pretty nice. All right, at this point, it's pretty much done. All you're going to do is take out your baste stitch and press the fold, which is already there based on how you've just stitched your zipper down. You're just going to press it a little nicer, and then you top stitch it all down. So that's me moving him out of the way. Again, too close to my sewing pedal. And my fingers are right there, so I don't want to get a needle in the finger because my dog was being excitable. All right, anyway, here's me. Less about Winston, more about this. I am going to just start taking my base stitch out here in just a second. I'm trying to demonstrate here how you'll end up top stitching it, which is you'll basically kind of follow the line of the curve of that banana. I like that I just call it a banana now. Makes sense. Press it, stitch it. For demo purposes, I don't know if I took my base stitched out before top stitching it. It's really sewer's choice. Sometimes I do because I really want to make sure that everything is lying flat, and if you've base stitched it, it might be doing something than the natural fold. I know that sounds kind of bonkers, so if you're not an advanced sewer, maybe that makes no sense, and that's totally fine. But basically, you just follow the curve of the banana shape on this side, and you're sewing your fly. And ta-da, you've made a fly. Okay, there's part one of the fly. I stitched this down again with a second stitch that's probably 1/4 of an inch away, but I do that after I take out my base stitch. You don't have to. I wanted to. I wanted to sew more. I'm going to take this opportunity because I included a lot of footage here of me taking out this base stitch. I want to say thank you to all of my YouTube subscribers who have helped make me grow this channel. And I'm just grateful that you're enjoying the content. And please let me know if there's anything specific you want to see. I sew a lot, and sometimes I need encouragement to share the kind of content people want to see versus me making a pair of shorts out of a vintage skirt, you know? All right, if you've gotten this far with me, you should have something that looks like this. And I am going to make another stitch right here next to it. Again, sewer's choice. You don't need to make a second line if you don't want to. It's really fun to do this with top stitch thread, which is a thicker thread, so you get that weightier looking seam that's common in jeans. For this, though, it doesn't really work. These are busy enough. All right, should look like that. You got your inside. And what I'm going to show you here is that tail of that zipper is too long, and you don't want to just cut it because then the zipper teeth can be kind of scratchy. You want to cover it with a piece of fabric. And I'm going to do that here in a second. I don't really show you how to do it because it's pretty straightforward. Just take a spare piece of fabric and fold it over it and stitch it down just like that. Now we're going to do the back, which is start with your darts. Darts on fabric, darts on lining. And then take the back seam of your back in both the fabric and the lining and stitch it together. One at a time. Not all together at the same time. All right. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to press that seam to one side. I'm not going to press it open. I'm going to press it to one side, and then I'm going to top stitch it down. And I'm doing this both on my lining and on my fabric. This just reinforces that booty seam. You know, in case you're like at the club and you're dropping it, which is not something I do because I'm not good at it. But some people do, and you don't want to bust your booty seam. That's no fun. Nobody likes that. And I'm repeating the same step I did on the front, which is putting in my hem before the shorts are assembled by just stitching those leg seams together. And you should have something that looks like this, which is the butt of some shorts. So stay stitch the sides and the top as I did in the front. And now, because I've decided to make this project with nothing but a straight seam stitch, which means you don't need serger, you don't need a zigzag machine. So I'm going to finish these edges by just sergering them, using my pinking shears. That's what they're called. That's right, Jamie. I'm going to use my pinking shears to cut next to that stay stitch. And that should hold everything together. Now, these might fray a little bit. You obviously don't want to throw them in the washer, not with this fabric. So those will be dry cleaned or hand washed in the future. But with the pinking shears and the stay stitch, you shouldn't have any issues. Now I'm just stitching together the front and the back sides, and I embroidered those so nicely. Look how fun. Ooh, these are what it looks like when the sides are sewn. And I also sewed the crotch, but I didn't really show you. It's just the same thing. Just stitch those pieces together. And now we're going to do the waistband. All right. You want to start at your center back seam and then walk each piece in and make sure you've got the right side matched with the right side in terms of how the fly lays. You want to have about half-inch overhang. And then you know you're stitching the waistband on right. But yeah, start at the back center seam. Match those two things and sew one side at a time. And now I've sewn one side and I've gone through and pressed it up because you're going to hide it in the fold of the other side. So press that seam that you just sewed where you attach the waistband to the shorts, press it up, and then press a hem in the top of the waistband and then flip it over, and then you top stitch that whole thing down. And oh my God, my pants is done. I put in a snap and a hook here and my label, but then you should be done with your shorts, y'all. You just made a shorts out of some vintage skirt, and here they are, and they are still a little shorter than I'd like, but damn, they cute. Boop. So cute. So cute. Thanks, y'all. Love ya. Happy crafting. Kisses.